United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. As you all know, we have a new member here tonight. His name is Dan Ty. He's from the Caseville area, ex-school superintendent. And welcome, Dan. Pleasure to have you. And we finally have a full group. I think we have a very good group here. I think we have an excellent blend of people. Just the way the planning act calls for it. Would you like to call the old members, please?
Mr. President. Mr. Vita.
Here.
Mr. Pepperson. Mr. Heck.
Here.
Mr. Longer.
Present.
Mr. McLean.
Here.
Mr. Tenbush.
Here.
Mr. Ty.
Here.
And Mr. Walker.
Here.
Are there any declarations of amendments to the agenda?
The only thing we had a little discussion before, but I do have a copy of Bridgehampton's wind ordinance, if you want to make a copy of that for everybody. In addition to the list you had, I know it's.
Can we do it at next meeting and then we'll just put it
Sure,
on?
sure.
Let's put it on, I'll put it as a communication. Can
Okay.
you get that to me?
Yep, I'll give it to you tonight.
Anybody else have anything?
I think this would be it, Bob, if not, maybe you wanna talk about later, but somewhere in our June sixth agenda, we should have, it should be in there that we're having a subcommittee meeting also. It's not on here. I think it would eliminate some confusion, if you want to consider that as a amendment, or if you want to talk about it later on.
We should list that when we talk about,
Number 6.
yeah. Okay, and then we'll put that in for the next meeting. Okay. Anybody else, any thoughts or concerns?
And just one question on that. Jeff, how far in front, if we find some others, if anybody finds more ordinances, when should have it to you? By how many days is that?
2 weeks before the,
2 weeks before the,
if we can, but we can.
2 weeks.
Pretty, with the holidays, there's always monkey wrenches that come up, so just
Okay, thank you.
get it and we'll get it, as long as we can get, the agenda comes out generally Thursday, Friday before the actual meeting, Wednesday before the meeting, so,
You want to get
You
it
have
at
a
least a
week.
full week.
yeah, a week at least.
I'll give you 2 weeks then.
For submission of stuff, I think members of the planning commission could go on a week before.
We've got more lenient with that, especially when it pertains to what we're doing.
Right,
Thank
as
you.
long as it can make the agenda before it gets sent out, then it's not an issue.
Anybody else? Entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Mr. Tenbush,
Second.
supported by Mr. Heck. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Minutes. Has everybody read the minutes for the May 2nd and the May 16th?
Chairman, yes, I have just a comment, I don't know whether or not it's appropriate or not. I did question, because of my neophyteness, whether or not it was really necessary on that election, the time we spent on the election. I questioned whether or not the parliamentarian and the corporate counsel was present, and he was, and I didn't see that in the notes. And I just feel that, not that I said it, anybody can say it, but that was important, very important, or lack of importance move that was made. Could have been quelled at the election meeting itself, and it was not.
And the meeting you're talking about is the April.
Well, the meeting where I brought it up was May 2nd. The meeting that I was talking about was when you had the elections for Julie,
The real.
and you set aside, you had a motion to set aside 13B in the bylaws, which was legal. So I don't don't wanna waste a lot of time on it, I just say I made the comment.
So what
it
you're
would be
saying,
part of the record.
what you're saying is your statement at the meeting when we redid the election should be in the minutes.
Yes,
Okay, whereabouts, would you like to see that? Give us the,
it was right in the end of the,
your final board comment
correct.
on which meeting,
It would have been on the May 2nd meeting
okay?
pertaining to whatever meeting the election was on. I was not present for that.
Okay.
I just asked the question.
You want to give us the motion?
I can write it up.
Please do. Anybody else see anything? Any concerns, any errors?
In the special meeting minutes, we're not on that one? Okay.
May 2nd meeting.
The only thing, Bob, is that, in regards to what Bob's talking about, the other Bob, was talking about, the reason I never commented on that when we did it was because that, setting that aside, I'm not sure, I wasn't sure, and I'm still not, can be used for the election position. I thought that was to conduct business.
I understand what you're saying, but if protocol was not followed,
Well, I'm saying I don't know if it was. At
Well,
that time, I didn't know if it was.
I understand what your position, I understand that. But the parliamentarian was here and the corporate counsel was here, one and the same person. There was no objections made at that meeting for the election. He could have stopped Jody, I believe,
Right.
could have stopped Jody, said, Bernie, you gotta take the seat until elections are over, whatever the case is. And set the that's what parliamentarians for. That's all, that's all.
Well, and all you're after is correctness in the minutes.
Pardon me?
All you're after is the correctness in the minutes.
Yes,
not
get it on record.
what decision was or was not made. Just the fact that the comment was in the meeting and it wasn't reflected in the minutes. So the suggested amendment that he's writing now is going to come under final board comment. I hope so too. All right, motion's been made by Mr. Tenbush and seconded by Mr. Heck. This is the motion. Final board comments. On May 2nd, I asked why, if the corporate counsel and the parliamentarian was present, why wasn't that action stopped and proper procedure followed? Instead, we wasted time and ended up in the same, at the same result. Everybody understand it? Questions, discussion? Roll call vote. Yes, sir.
To approve the minutes with that amendment, that's what the roll call is on.
Right. Ready?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Duda?
Yes.
Epperson, yes. Mr. Heck?
Yeah.
Mr. Loungin?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Tenbush?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Motion approved. May 2nd minutes are approved.
I have one more thing.
On the minutes?
Yeah, I mean, Well, perhaps I spoke out of turn, but I don't think my question's ever been answered. It says here, I recommend get the corporate counsel's opinion when we set that aside again. And Bob commented as unnecessary as PC bylaws state they can be suspended for one meeting. But to my point, did we ever find out whether that pertains strictly for day-to-day business, or is that also hold true for elections?
As far as I understand, it pertains to anything and everything in the bylaw.
Could we get a legal opinion on that?
You can ask corporate if you'd like. That's, I mean,
And that's what I was getting
Yeah,
at.
I understand,
I didn't mean
I
to
understand your question.
speak
I
out of
would,
turn.
I would suggest that if there was a problem, we would have heard about it by now. My understanding of it is it pertains to any and all items in the bylaws.
That's my understanding as well. It states that.
Right. Any one item for the duration of only one meeting. Okay?
Okay.
All right, minutes from the special meeting on May 16th. Anybody have any additions or corrections there?
Only, Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dembush.
in the roll call, I see we have Dr. Oaks Zoom, and I believe that's just a
Oh, yes.
Freudian slip there.
Right. Anybody have anything else? I would like a motion to approve with that correction. Somebody like to put that motion on the table? Motion by Mr. Duda, seconded by Mr. Tenbush. All those in favor with that correction, approving minutes for May 16th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. At this point in time, we're gonna open the meeting up to public comment. Protocol is 3 minutes on any topic pertaining to planning and zoning. Is there anybody that would like to be heard here tonight? Mr. Curry. Or,
Good evening.
good evening, sir.
Sammy Corey, Huron County Commissioner, District 1, for those of you that don't know. I would like to welcome Mr. Ty. Enjoy your time on the Planning Commission. Welcome. And has he been sworn in?
Yes, sir.
Okay, nice, very nice. I was asked that earlier, so. I would like to invite the officers of the Planning Commission to our Committee of the Whole meeting on June 19th. And that'll be at 9 o'clock, so we'll put you guys on the schedule.
Okay.
Just informal, just kind of get to know each other a little bit better and try to steer the Planning Commission in the right direction. A few of our commissioners have questions, and I guess if you want me to elaborate a little bit further, I can.
Go ahead.
It's concerning the wind committee that you guys have going.
Okay.
Some of them feel like we should have a solar committee to get our solar ordinance going into place. So there'll be some questions like that towards you guys, so I guess that'll prepare you a little bit on, you know, what they're thinking.
Okay.
And what else is there? I guess concerning what, you know, you guys were talking about, Mr. Allen, not speaking up during that meeting. I guess some things are missed, and after probably he thought about it, and as long as our planning commission did its due diligence and to try to appoint a secretary, that's what I think he was concerned about, is the planning commission doing its due diligence on the appointment of the secretary. So as long as we exhausted all of the members, then we don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, we had no other choice.
Yeah, exactly.
You said 9 AM or 9:15?
It's 9.
But we're on the agenda for right at 9?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. We'll put you guys first thing up there, legislative.
Here, I thought you were gonna invite us to a barbecue or something like that.
I wish I could, if we had a little balcony out here with a, they missed the boat when they built this building.
Commissioner Epperson's got it right. She says, "We are the barbecue."
No, you're not.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just to clarify, that's the officers, so Bob, Carl, and Julie.
Mhm.
Right,
Other members can attend the board meeting.
right.
The rest of the board can attend if they want to, but the 3 planning members will be up front, the three officers will be up front, but they won't have any part of the discussion in the back.
If they wanna come and observe.
Exactly, you're able to do that, but, you know,
And they, you know, and if they're there, they may get asked a question, you never know.
we won't be asking them any questions, it'll be just the officers.
Okay.
We have to strictly, because of the fact that, you know, then you guys will have a quorum.
Right, depending on how many showed up. If there was 5, then it would pass the quorum.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
What date was that, Mr. Chairman?
That's the
19th.
19th at 9 a.m. Any other members of the public who would like to address this board here tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public comment at this point in time and move on. We have no public hearings tonight, so we're gonna move on past that. We have communications we all received in our packets. And we have quite an extensive number of them. We have a number of ordinances. We have planning and zoning for solar in Michigan from MSU. I hope everybody has looked at these documents. Okay. I found some things useful in some of them, others I didn't agree with. Jeff, anything you wanna add?
Basically, what I wanted to do was just search out current commercial solar ordinances in Michigan. There was no preference on what townships I picked. I just did a Google search, and whatever came up, I figured 7 or 8 of them was enough at this point. But I just wanted to give all the planning commission members some information. It might, like we had a little bit of discussion earlier in the committee meeting, it just might spark some thoughts that we can all keep in the back of our minds and maybe jot some notes down, saying that is a good idea to have in our ordinance when we get to it, but just to help all members just bring up some of the issues that they've dealt with in other jurisdictions. And when we get to that point, we'll have a good basis to base ours on.
I would suggest to everyone, you know, even if we do get a solar committee going, ultimately it's gonna come back to this whole group. And when you read through these documents, make notes on them, don't be afraid to write on them. Make notes where you see something that you think is good, that we should incorporate, and make notes on something we can stay away from as well. And that doesn't mean that these are the only documents that we will ever utilize in creating a solar ordinance by any means.
Just a simple search.
And you are all welcome to bring anything forward that you find.
Jeff, you made a comment during that committee that you only stayed in Michigan. Was there any particular reason for that, or?
Just because they're subject to the same rules we are, the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act.
Okay.
There's other states that have other regulation and statutes that they're required to follow, and their boards are to follow. They may be very consistent with what we do here in Michigan, but that's all I wanted to do was just try to get, I just wanted to get some local stuff and just set our boundary as Michigan at this point, but if there's others out there, you know, that's something, I know MSU had some sample stuff out that we've given previously. So just, you guys come up with some good ordinances, and what I'd like to see is that whatever we adopt is, you know, we'll ultimately get to choose what we adopted here in county, but just to use stuff that's already done in Michigan kind of makes sense at this point, as a starting point.
Right. Okay.
As you said, the rules and regulations are gonna be the same. You go to other states, sometimes there are, sometimes there are not.
Right.
Yeah, watch
And they
that.
could have some mandates that wouldn't be applicable to us in Michigan, which would affect their ordinances, so that's.
Okay, thank you.
And that applies for both solar and wind. We're gonna be dealing with both of these topics going forward. You know, we wanna get the master plan wrapped up, and then we're gonna get these two items wrapped up. Okay, item 6, reports from the wind committee. We met tonight. Our next meeting is gonna be 27th at 6 p.m. We're gonna keep hashing away at it. Anybody that has documents that they want to submit, get them to Jeff, and he'll get them to us on the wind committee. But as many of you that can attend and follow along, I think it would be a good do, so that when it comes to all of us, you know what we looked at, what we discussed, and make your notes too. If you're sitting out there in the audience, make notes on things that you agree or disagree with, because that will expedite the process. If we want to get this done, fairly prompt manner. We've got a lot of things to do. I realize it's cumbersome sometimes, but let's be as efficient as we possibly can be. Unfinished business. Huron County Master Plan. We've got a meeting, as we said, on the 27th. We're going to have the Wind Committee at 6. Spicer Group's going to be here at 7. And we're going to go back at it some more on that master plan. Primarily, it's going to be on solar types of land where we deem appropriate. So bring your thoughts, do your studying before the meeting, be ready to go. At the county hazard mitigation plan, do we have any updates on that? Mr.
Real quickly, for the benefit of the new members, my name is Winston, and I do the emergency management planning, and I'm the keeper of the hazardous mitigation plan. Through this process, the hazardous mitigation plan has to work hand in hand with your master plan, so that's why it's on the agenda with you guys. 9/10 of these things are going to go back and forth, and some of it's going to be a little bit different. We're trying to roll those together. As we finish up your master plan, we'll walk into the hazardous mitigation plan. In conjunction with that, we placed a grant before the federal government for our hazardous mitigation plan for them to pay for part of it, and that has been partially approved. Talking with other counties at emergency management meetings in the last couple of weeks, they're all waiting for the same response we're waiting for. They got the same questions back basically from the federal government after they get initial approval, like we did, and we're just waiting for those to be returned. They also said it's been taking up to 6 months for those questions to come back and get approvals. So you're probably going to hear the next couple of months is just sitting and waiting, and all of a sudden it's going to drop in our lap. And Spicer Group hopefully will be allowed to continue with the work on that too. So hazardous mitigation plan difference from the master plan, and it deals strictly with trying to mitigate future problems. And don't put nasty stuff next to nice stuff. Don't build in a flood zone, those type of things. And that we don't have a lot of in our county, but there's some things that we can talk about when it comes up to that. The hazardous mitigation plan has a very strict format that it must follow. And through their process, there'll be public hearings, the same as there is with the master plan. There'll be public input, and there'll be a lot of local government input. Our master plan will be sent out to the counties around us for them to review, as well as us to have for ourselves. It'll be sent to the township governments, the village governments, the city governments, and they can look at it, use it for their purposes, sign off on it, join us. Even if they're not a county zone community, it can help them in some things that they're going forward with. It's quite a comprehensive process. It has to be basically done from 1 year from the time we start it to the time we finish it, because the grant money needs to be expended in that time. There are the criteria that the federal government will have in there that we have to have into it. And as we get that here, I'll show it all to you and let you concentrate on the other things that you got before we get to that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me any time in my office, any time of the day, and I can try to catch you up onto what it really is more in depth without spending a whole lot of time at the meeting here tonight. So for the benefit of those who just joined us on the commission, thank you. I've said this before, this is a very difficult place to sit sometimes, and we really do appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Do you have a list
As far as
with not having certain things side by side, anything we can do to help, that type of thing?
a lot of that comes down to community participation, and we take the community input more importantly than we do a lot of the other things. And this has a lot of industrial, a lot of the businesses are gonna get a big say in this to say what they think too. So one of the things that we talk about sometimes is water intakes. So we have water intake. Those are things that we have to look very closely at. What kind of industrial facilities do we have near our water intakes? And which way does the water flow? And those are important things that we have to do. If you get any kind of contamination in your water intakes, so in our county, you got the whole east side of the county of Harbor Beach's intake gets messed up because it goes from Forestville all the way up to Huron City. So those are the kind of things that get contaminated very easily if you get nasty stuff in your water. Caseville obviously supplies Pigeon. So there's different places, and those are big things that we look at. Port Austin supplies Bad-Ax. Those are important factors that we look at. Zebra mussels and things of that nature around water intakes. You got algae blooms, those kind of things. So phosphorus is something that we are, you know, that we look at when we're doing a hazardous mitigation plan. Those are the kind of things that we're looking at. Industrial facilities next to a hospital, you don't put a chemical plant next to a school, and that's zoning, and you guys have worked on that, and you've got a pretty good plan on that already, so, but it doesn't change the world, but it does tell you things to not do. You get the Army Corps of Engineers, when we have levees in our county, believe it or not, they get involved in some of that, and we get reports on that. Jeff has a report from the Corps of Engineers that I got, and I turned it over to Jeff, because I think it's important for him to see, so those are the things we look at.
Yeah, welcome your input, and we want to work close with you.
Like I said, when we get started, I'll have a larger role once we get rolling on that. I'll be a little more upfront when we do that, and Jeff will take a back seat to that one, because this is my load to bear a little bit more than his. And I work with the people at the state of Michigan. We'll initially get this, and then it goes to FEMA and it comes back. So, and you guys will help craft that plan. But most of that's basically going to be Spicer Group or whoever the plan writer is, coordinating all that stuff in there. And you guys say, this looks right. We can agree with this, and then we send it to the Board of Commissioners for approval. This plan, as far as I know right now, once it's approved by you, is the approval process. They have not said that they want to approve it at the board level. And my understanding is this is where it would be, but they obviously have to accept the grant and spend the money, because the only entity in the county that can accept monies is the Board of Commissioners.
Replacement transformer, and that project has been operating again the last couple of weeks.
Replacement of the temporary.
I haven't confirmed with them regardless, most likely a temporary. I believe
Yeah.
they stated to rework their original transformer would take 6 to 8 months, so I'm assuming it's a temporary replacement.
Okay. For those of you that don't know, the Apple Blossom facility was put in, tried to go online, I think it was successful for a couple of days.
It was online for a while before the transformer failed.
So they had a transformer fail, and they were out, what, 4 weeks, something like that? Okay.
2 months, probably.
So they're back up and running for the time being, and we're going to be getting in the near future. It's due on November 21st, that's why the date is on there. Your new business, we have some terminations. PA 116, applicants are from Jurgis, Weitzel, and Ashbetcher. Yep, you want to fill this in?
First one, item number 1 is Troy Stock, which is a trustee for the Harold Netherland Stock Living Trust, requesting a partial termination of 1.35 acres. This is in section 32 of Seaboard Township. The request is to terminate based on the fact that there's structures that existed prior to the start date of the agreement. So with the terminations, I do review these packages, make sure they're complete to the state's requirements of what's needed to be submitted. And the terminations I do submit to you guys so that we can have them to review. But aerial imagery, which is the county's aerial imagery, I added in kind of what they're terminating. You can clearly see there's 2 storage buildings there. And to comply with zoning, there's a requirement to be, why it's an L-shaped 1.35 acres is because of the zoning requirement on the distance required behind the back of that shed, so. And the assessor has done a tax cost study for the past 7 years for that 1.35 acres. So at this point, everything is in order, pending Board of Commissioners approval of a resolution, which I will help prepare and get to the board for action at their next meeting, pending your recommendation to approve.
Does anybody see any items of concern on this application?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
may I ask Jeff, no, I see that the figures are for the taxes. I don't see anything on the interest. This has nothing to do with death or anything, so interest would be applied.
The State Treasury Department calculates, all they wanna know is the taxable value of the 1.35 acres
Okay, so that-
with buildings. And then they'll go off what was turned in for the property taxes for the past 7 years. And the Treasury Department then looks at their tax returns to find out if there was any credits taken, and then the Treasury determines all of what is required for payback.
Okay, thank you.
They put all the pieces of the pie together.
Okay.
We're just the reviewing agency to whether or not we approve or deny the request.
But it's good that you see the taxation in there, that they have the figures, so it has been looked into. We have the survey, you can see how the property lays, where the buildings are. A lot of times this helps to get things back in the lot, or setbacks, those types of things. Anybody else have any comments or concerns on this application? If not, I'll entertain the motion to approve or disapprove.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Okay. I'll support it. Motion by Mr. Tenbush, supported by Mr. Krager. Approve this one from Harold Stock Trust. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommend that, Jeff. Next one, Terry C. Jervis, Jeffrey Jervis. What are the particulars?
This same thing, there's a checklist that's attached, which is a document that the farmland office has put out for partial terminations. This is a termination, in Siegel Township. They're asking for 4.5 acres. If you look through the application, you see the survey, and the assessor has completed the tax assessment. You'll look at the picture that was provided by the property owner, and because of the well and the septic and whatnot, they're looking at just squaring up that corner lot. There generally would be, that's where the planning commission comes in, is it prudent to just square it up? And if you read, I believe the property owners have submitted a letter, or the actual attorneys have submitted, and then there's a letter of explanation that they would like to just square it up because trying to farm into that corner with today's equipment really doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, because
So-
we're going for a little extra
They're actually,
land here.
you can go up to 5 acres required by zoning. So technically, yes, to get the setbacks, they have to square it up as far as they did. But they're asking to come straight south to the corner of the intersection instead of jogging around and having a farmer try to farm in that corner. I don't know what's left for footage there, but, I think that, to me, it makes sense to square up that parcel and they're gonna farm around it. Trying to back into that corner with the equipment and farm that little chunk. It might be, half an acre or an acre possibly, but, they're looking to just square that up, so they tried to defend their provision that, of why they'd like to just square it up and not cut it back off. If it may be 100, 120 feet there or something, or 150 feet to try to farm it, but trying to turn equipment around in that to me would be pretty difficult with the size of things.
And it makes a nice parcel, it's a larger parcel, and you get frontage on 2 roads. Fits in real well.
And generally, the state doesn't get too concerned as long as you stay under 5 acres.
Right. That's the threshold.
Well, and that will be continually used for agriculture, just kept as one, as some of this there is part of the farm.
Correct. They just wanna split it out maybe for financing purposes, or who knows. There may be additional sheds built there for the farm operation, you never know, but,
I hope it's not just to sell off little lots on the front road frontage. I doubt it is.
I wouldn't think that would be that's not their,
No, like Bernie said, my son's gonna live there, so he can buildings and things for the farm operation. Anybody else have any comments or concerns?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr.
Um,
Dambush.
the statement's being made that 5 acres is the requirement. I thought it was 2, and that you had to meet certain criterion to make it larger than that. And part of that criterion is piece of the property cannot be farmed. Well, I stopped by the place on the way here today, and I can't believe a piece of equipment can't turn around in that. I'm not poo-pooing what the Jurgises wanna do, I'm not doing that at all, I'm just saying, if we set a precedence here on something like this, are we setting a precedence, or is it acceptable in the state to go over the 2 acres and just say it's 5 acres? I don't know. And if that question is valid, then I would like our corporate counsel to look at it and put a stamp of approval on it that that's exactly what can happen. I don't wanna set a precedence for the rest. Everybody said, well, the Jurgises did 5 acres, I wanna do 7 acres, and I'm in almost the same situation.
Did you have any discussions with them, Jeff, on the lack of ability to farm it once this is approved?
No.
Because in their letter, it kind of contradicts each other in the second paragraph. They said they want to sell it and they will continue to use the parcel for agricultural purposes, I'm assuming, the buildings. And then down the bottom, the proposed split, on the last paragraph, the proposed split parcel would not be used for agricultural purposes, but for residential purposes, which the proposed split parcel is more suited for. It's a nice spot, right on the corner, paved both ways, it's a nice spot.
It's on a main paved road.
Now, there's no crops planted there, but it's leveled off as such that it wouldn't take much to seed it and make it a real good lawn. So,
And they-
my only concern is the 5 acres versus the 2 acres and setting a precedent, that's all.
And they may, where it's leveled off too, they might wanna put a big garden in there too, you know.
Or another building or whatever.
Yeah. Any multitude of things.
But he can put that in, the boy can put that into crops to use for himself. Like if he wanted to put
Sure.
horses in the barn,
Right.
you know, use it for alfalfa. It's just that it can't be used as part of the larger.
Cash crop.
I understand that.
That's my
Yeah,
understanding.
I understand that. My only concern is the 5 acres over the 2. That's my only,
What's your thoughts?
The township assessor believes it's prudent to include the acreage in front of buildings to remain with the buildings because it's too small a farm with large equipment. Yeah, you could get in there probably and farm it with large equipment. So I guess it's your guys' call, if you wanna approve it or you wanna delay action on it. And, well, if you delay action on it based on if you wanted a smaller parcel, you'd have to have the surveyor resurvey it. And, which they could do. Now, the well itself qualifies as a structure also, so they're showing the well there on the south side of the drive.
and it's visible too, you can see it right from.
That's gotta be included.
It's in there, you can see it.
So, you know, it's,
So it's a matter of, I mean, basically, is it the buildings in 3 acres or the buildings in 4.5 to 5?
right.
Anybody else have concerns or comments?
Jeff passed away last week, by the way.
Yeah?
Jeff did?
Oh, it was, service Saturday.
It's not a good thing.
54 years old.
Wow.
Way from down. What are we thinking, ladies and gentlemen? We want to get, as Mr. Tembush said, an opinion from corporate counsel. Do we want to dig into this a little deeper? Or do we want to set sail?
After the question, or issue, I would probably should ask corporate counsel his opinion. Make a motion to table this until
So we can
it can
actually-
do so.
Okay, get your pen to the paper there, give us a quick little motion.
I thought that was only for complicated motion. That's what the
Well,
new
this one
bylaw
could,
said.
this one could get complicated.
My motion ain't complicated.
Think so? Yeah, it'll only be a one sentence anyways from it. That way we've got the document in writing. We've got the paper trail. I think Mr. Tenbush is on the right path there, because we definitely don't want to set a precedent that's going to come back and bite us down the road.
Bob,
Yes, sir.
can I ask, Mr. Chair, can I ask, I'll Jeff a question?
Sure.
Have applications like these been approved in the past?
Up to 5 acres, yes.
Similar scenarios, have they been approved in the past?
Most of the time, there's even more buildings that require the additional acreage.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen this one at all, or would you like to see it?
Yeah.
You've got a copy of it.
Yeah.
You see the layout of the land,
Yeah.
how there's quite a bit of frontage up there on the main
Mhm.
road.
Right.
Now, that could be a concern if it's taken out
Mm-hmm.
and the son that's moving in, correct? You know, maybe down the road, he wants to start parceling that off.
Right.
And I don't think-
So the homestead is in PA 116 right now?
Everything's in.
Yeah, and they just wanna make it, they just want, well, everything is in, and then they wanna take out the homestead and the larger parcel.
No, the homestead, the buildings, and a little
And a
piece of
little
this
bit more,
is what-
yes.
The 4.5 acres they want to remove,
Mm-hmm.
and generally there's other reasons why people need to remove that, whether it's financing, mortgages.
Right.
Some mortgage companies won't finance a home that's in rural PA 116.
So just, my thought process is that, if an individual wants to remove their homestead, why should we stop them? And if they do wanna remove it, don't they have to pay the taxes to the state anyways?
They have to pay it back.
Yes.
And we've had people in the past not remove it, but then violate the statute. We had one, I don't know what, I think it was Lincoln Township, they were violating it for years. 'Cause
Mm-hmm.
They grassed an entire 5-acre site and built a shed and was living in the shed, and it just was not used for agricultural purposes. So it's not right for them to leave that in. If they do that, then it's not right to leave that in either,
Mm-hmm.
because they're taking credits on that property that's no longer used for ag production. So you gotta weigh out, you know, that's where your discretion comes in, the county board's discretion comes in, is what makes the most sense to do there.
A lot of times in these situations, what we see is the farms being sold, and the buildings get separated off, and they sell somebody a residential home with a little bit of land, and
Mm-hmm.
either somebody else buys a farm, or they keep the farm and just sell that
Right.
piece off, because they don't wanna live there anymore, they built themselves another.
And that's possible in this scenario too,
Yeah,
where
Eventually.
after they remove it, they're gonna sell.
right, exactly.
I mean, it looks like a nice area, there's a huge field behind it,
Yeah, it's a nice location.
yeah.
Definitely is. Say, I like the idea of squaring it up and having a large parcel with the buildings, because
Mhm.
it makes a nice, rural residence. So I have a motion here for Mr. Heck to table the Jurgis request to remove 4.5 acres of land from PA 116. And Mr. Heck, I think this should be modified to pending the, what?
Corporate
Corporate counsel's
advice.
opinion, advice? How do you want it worded?
Pending corporal counsel, just like you said, pending corporal counsel opinion.
Question? Not sure what.
All right. Motion by Mr. Heck to table the Jurgis request to remove 4.5 acres of land for PA 116 pending corporate counsel's opinion. Motion by Heck, seconded by Tenbush. Any further discussion? All of those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, can we roll call?
She was writing one out, right?
That's fine.
Because he's take actual action, but
Well, it's being set aside, tabled, it's not finalized at this point in time. That's why I didn't feel we needed it. Okay. Next item, Bill Weitzel, current owner of property under Howard Bedford, requesting determination of .95 acres land, currently PA 116. Particulars on this, Jeff.
this application's quite lengthy. The biggest issue is the fact that, there's been many years gone by and many ownership changes in the property from when the original enrollment was in the Howard Bedford Trust. Mr. Bedford had sold, Mr. Weitzel portion of his property back, in 1988. There was another portion under land contract that was satisfied at a later date. And so therefore, I believe since 2010, the .95 acres that's being requested for termination has been owned by Bill and Carol Weitzel. And the PA 116 agreement is still in Howard Bedford's name, which has passed away. The land was sold in 2015 to Doug and Diane Yakeley and Jim and Susan Licht. And then immediately thereafter, they sold a portion of the farm field was sold to John W. Nintz Trust. All the while, the PA 116 was not addressed by any of the attorneys involved in any of those transactions. And that's an issue regardless. We've had that happen where if people aren't doing their research, that things like this get missed. So the hiccup is that you'll see in the application, there's a letter from Clark and Clark, the attorneys that's been involved for quite some time. Actually, this all started a couple of years ago. And then there's the application checklist, there's the development rights agreement, which is still in the Howard Bedford Trust. There's a development rights agreement, there's a affidavit or basically information pertaining to the transactions that had happened, where portions of the property were sold to Weitzel's. And basically since January 1 of 2010, the Weitzel's have owned that acreage, so therefore there's no credits being taken on that acreage. And that's a road program because it's not even owned by the John C. Nims Trust. It's owned by Weitzel's.
So did anybody take any credits after Bedford on it?
Well, they can, well, they could have, but the assessor, and that's where you get into the documents that I've worked on, to try to get the assessor. The assessor has signed a certificate describing the portion that there was structures present when that was enrolled. Years ago, there was 2 barns or 2 buildings on that .95 acres when it was enrolled in the program in the first place. But due to the fact that those buildings were dilapidated, the Weitzel's have removed those 2 buildings and rebuilt one in its place. But the thing is, the statute says that the structures have to exist prior to the enrollment, and there are water structures there when it was enrolled. So technically, yes, the structures were enrolled, even though today the structures that are there are not what was there when it was enrolled. The other fact of it is, there's the affidavit from the Weitzel's explaining all the transactions of properties and the dates. But essentially, there's the affidavit from the assessor that certifies that there's been no tax credits taken because the farmer can't take tax credits on the .95 acres because they haven't owned it since 2010. Therefore, we have 8 years that they couldn't have taken a tax credit anyway. So there's no taxable value or breakdown valuation to be made, because the farmer didn't actually own that land, the Weitzel's did. And that's all because the original attorneys in the township split the land and did splits and combines without reviewing, 1, zoning, and 2, PA 116. And I've been battling that countywide, that things are getting done without zoning review, and the whole PA 116 program is based on local zoning approval for all those documents. So things have happened beyond our control, because we're maybe the last to know about it.
Yeah, even if it's a self-zoned township, it's dealt with at the township level.
Right,
Moves up.
we never see it.
Right.
So that can happen in those, plus the ones that are under the county zoning jurisdiction we're involved with directly. So this one here is quite the mess.
Yeah.
And so then I reached out to Farmland Office. They've actually had a request to do the transfer of that 30-acre parcel that is farmed. They asking for additional copy of the deeds which conveyed the acreage. So we have all the documents together, and the deeds, the land contracts, and all the stuff that the state asked for. I spoke with the state on this, and they're in agreement that yes, the .95 acres should be terminated because it's not even in the farm parcel anymore.
Right. Yeah,
So-
buildings changed.
Even though the buildings have changed, generally the assessor tries to give a taxable value, but in this regard, the issue is, it took quite a while talking with the state on this one. The issue is that there's no tax credits to be taken because essentially the parcel was not assessed to the farmer for the past 10, since 2010.
Well,
So this is 2018, so essentially the last 8 years, there's no way they even could have taken credits on that .95 acres because it wasn't owned by the farmer.
That's really the good thing out of the whole mess.
Really it is.
That was not executed.
And so
Had it been, it would have been a real.
if you look
disaster.
back, the original warranty deeds for when the Weitzels had purchased that property, would have been nice if they would have caught it at that point, but then they didn't. And the splits had happened, and the new ownership had transferred through. And meanwhile, the PA 116 sitting out there.
Sitting in limbo. Yep.
So what you're saying is there's really no issue.
A lot of paperwork, but
Well,
not a real.
A lot of work on it, really essentially, that needs to be terminated to correct all the issues that are out there.
Basically, if we approve the termination, it's something that should have been done 10 years ago.
More than that.
Robert, can I ask just a background
Yes,
question?
sir.
This commission, what is our responsibility as this commission to actually enforce the taxation component of PA 116?
Are not the enforcer of the taxation.
Okay. And so when we're asked not only to leave PA 116, but to come into PA 116, we are basically following the law that lays out. This committee will make recommendations for the inclusion or exclusion of property. It is not our job, is this correct?
Yes,
It
sir.
is not our job to, for example, try to fix this mess.
Right. I mean, in the previous one, when you look at the map on that, it's up to us to look at the buildings, the land, the way it's situated, what kind of boundary lines would straighten up a parcel, for example, and does it make sense? And we, yeah, for zoning orders. And then we look at that and say, yes, it makes sense, or no, it doesn't. If it doesn't, then maybe we make a suggestion that, you know, this, in this prior example, maybe it should only be 3 acres. But any of these decisions that we make are just recommendations that go to the Board of Commissioners for final approval, and then it goes on to the state. So we are in an advisory capacity.
And the state makes the final decision.
Right.
Then obviously, good work here is important.
Yeah.
Question.
And the state wants us to oversee and give recommendation to what's going on in their own backyard. You know, 'cause they're not here, boots on the ground.
but not on the matter of taxation.
Correct. And that's totally off the table for us. And it's good that we see past year's taxes in there, and we can see all the different things, whether they've gotten credits, they haven't gotten credits, because things can fall through the cracks as they did in this one. We don't want that, catch it before it gets 8, 10, 12 years down the road.
And that's the biggest thing, again, back to the checklist. The checklist that the state wants from the review agencies is a copy of the agreement, a resolution from the zoning authority, which comes from the county board of commissioners, and you guys are the regional planning commission. So you recommend approval or denial to the county board, and they pass the resolution. And then the legal description of the parcel to be released, and then number 9 is a listing of the taxable value parcel to be released. That's the issue with this application, is that we essentially can't get that because they have not been assessed that since 2010. So it's confusing because the state says, well, we need that to process this application. So he's saying our resolution to them has to also reference the fact that because the farm, the John C. Nims or the Bedford Trust has not owned that 0.95 acres since 2010, there is no tax cost calculation as part of the requirements of the application to terminate. We need to make it clear to the state, that's what we'll put in the, I'll put in the resolution that the board will eventually adopt. But it's just,
Has looked at this entire portfolio, and, he or she is happy that, taxes have been paid and everything's up to date and credits weren't taken.
that's, she can't determine that. That's what her affidavit, I believe all she's stating is that there were structures there prior to the original enrollment. But she has stated, she has not given the tax breakdown because of the fact that the Howard Bedford Trust or John C. Nims, or at this point, the legal paperwork in the Register of Deeds is that Nims owns the property, but yet the PA 116 is in Howard Bedford's name. So I'm assuming that there's been no credits taken because if Howard Bedford has passed and the property was transferred, I'm assuming that there's been no credits taken because if there would have been, the state would have caught this a long time ago. I would have hoped.
And then, in that vein, then the Wetzels would have property tax on that small parcel that they have.
They're paying the taxes on it.
Okay, all right, all right.
This is slightly confusing.
Oh, this is a good one. No question about it. Probably the lengthiest ones that I've seen. A lot of twists and turns. What's your pleasure, ladies and gentlemen?
I make a motion, we approve the termination.
Motion by Tenbush, supported by Crater. Need a roll call, Mr. I think we should. Complexity of this. Madam Secretary?
Mr. Crater?
Yes.
Mr. Duda?
Yes.
Jefferson, yes. Mr. Heck?
Yes.
Mr. Bonner?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Mr. Tenbush?
Yes.
Mr. Ty?
Yes.
And Mr. Walker?
Yes. Motion passed. Okay. Enrollment applications, we have 2 this month. Palmering, Doug and Sarah, Section 1, Harbor Beach, can enroll 35 acres, no buildings, for only 10 years. Definitely unusual,
That's the minimum enrollment, by the way, 10 years.
right? Max is 90. Everything,
Both applications are complete. There was confusion on the first one about how many acres it actually was. But we've worked with the property owner to confirm, and I worked with Harbor Beach to confirm. So we're going with 35 acres, plus or minus. The state ultimately determined the legal description when they finalized the paperwork, but there was 2 different numbers given on the application, so we had to clarify, but
how much of a discrepancy was it?
3 acres.
Looks straightforward otherwise?
Yeah.
No problems, no concerns?
Yeah, either one.
Either application. Jeff is saying both look good for ours as well, which is section 20 Sheridan Township, 94 acres, 91.4 is being cultivated, no buildings, and they're asking for 90 years on that. So we can either approve these both together, or we can take them separately. Anybody have any concerns? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. For, against, whatever.
Make a motion to pass both of them.
Make a motion by Krager to pass both,
I'll second.
supported by Tembush. All of those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. At this time, on our agenda, it's time for final public comment. Is there anybody out there in the audience that would like to address this board on planning and zoning? Hearing and seeing none, we're going to close public comment and move on to final planning commission comment. Mr. Heck.
Why did I have to write my motion down and burn in Mr. Timbush didn't?
We like picking on you.
No.
We want to check,
I just wanted an answer.
we want to get your writing.
You write my handwriting, don't you?
Yeah, get you in practice for big things down the road.
Generally, just did a roll call vote on P 116 enrollments.
Enrollment? We can't.
I've been here yet.
Okay. Madam Secretary.
Or, I mean, not a roll call. Sorry, just a voice vote.
Oh, well, that's what we did.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's, we've generally just done that with PA 116.
All right, we're good. That's what I thought. A little confused there. Yes, yeah.
It's not on the agenda, but
Right.
we need to know if we want
Now's,
to go,
now's the time.
because of the June 28th deadline. For registration.
Everybody has this flyer from MTA in front of them. Please have a look at it, see if you have interest in these classes. We just got it tonight, so take a moment and look at it. What did you see in here, Jeff?
Just,
You
they've
like-
done their hot topics in planning and zoning before. I
Right,
don't think it really discloses what's gonna be on their agenda.
doesn't appear to this time. Sometimes they do.
Right to Farm Act and, dams. There's other issues, that they'll
Yeah,
surely get into.
problem, one should be, and possibly maybe medical marijuana. We went before, kind of were disappointed because the state changed things in the middle of the game on that. The locations are on the back. We don't have any, oh, we do have.
Rankin was
Yeah.
closest.
July the 19th, Thursday.
Isn't this the one also where they're gonna have counsel there, legal counsel, doing part of the presentation on
Typically,
this?
she is the one that does it, Catherine.
Yes. That's
I
Catherine
think they have
Kaufman.
someone else besides her.
Catherine Kaufman and, no, Catherine Kaufman is the counsel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she's usually the one that does it.
So generally, members, if you wanna go to that, we generally, the county has a vehicle that we can use for like 4 members or 5 members. And then
Rest carpool.
typically one member will offer to drive and, but, I need to know before, I need to know as soon as possible, so that way I can register everyone. The county will
So
pick
she'll
up,
let you know by Friday.
yeah, the county will pick up the cost of the registration.
This Friday?
No, yeah, to let us know, but the
Yeah.
class is on the 19th.
Right, yeah, class time.
July 19th is the class, but
Right, yeah.
I'd like to know sooner than later so I can.
If we,
Right.
if we apply earlier, we get a discount.
It's $91 per person to go if we register before June 28th.
Right.
And it'll take some time to get through the board and stuff.
Right.
So we generally need to know sooner than later.
So what we're looking for is the decision to be made by all members by this Friday. Give enough lead time. If you know tonight, go ahead and speak up tonight, let Jeff know. There are other locations, but none are as close as that.
I'll go with it.
Pardon? Okay. Mr. Walker and Mr. Jefferson. I will probably go too, Jeff. Thursday. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this topic?
I will let you know, I have to do some checking.
Okay.
That'd be the same for me.
George, do you have any?
I most likely won't come, so if I change my mind,
Bernie?
Undetermined.
Determined? Okay. I'm not sure. All right, anybody have anything to say on their final board comment? Anything they'd like to share with us tonight?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to reiterate on the solar ordinances, everybody, please, it'd be nice if everybody got online and started looking at other ordinances, even in addition to what Jeff provided us with. By the next meeting, we should have, Bridgehampton also, but there are other ones out there. And, just make a checklist, like you mentioned before, make a checklist as you go through one of them. Just pick one of them and start making a checklist. And,
Yeah, either list things that you
yep,
like or would like to incorporate in ours, or put notations there that, yes, I like this ordinance, this line item here, whatever the case may be. And if you see one particular ordinance you think has no value, by all means, take it known. Anything else from anyone? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion by Mr. Kenbush, second by Mr. Creed. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
All right.